Everyone expected AI to come for the easiest jobs first. The interns, the juniors, the beginners writing basic reports, simple code, and entry-level analysis. That was the prediction. That was the comforting narrative. But reality is moving in a completely different direction, because the first people AI is quietly replacing are not beginners. They are experts. The ones with decades of experience, the ones with advanced degrees, the ones who built entire careers mastering complexity. And it's happening so quietly that most people haven't even noticed the shift yet. Not because experts are failing, but because AI is starting to outperform them in the one place where expertise used to matter most: pattern recognition at scale. And once that changes, the definition of expert starts to break. For most of modern history, expertise meant something very specific: years of experience, deep domain knowledge, the ability to see patterns others miss, the ability to make decisions under uncertainty. Experts were trusted because they had seen more than everyone else. They had accumulated mental models built from thousands of real-world cases. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, financial analysts, scientists, strategists. They were the people you went to when problems became too complex for average thinking. But AI doesn't learn like humans. It doesn't need years. It doesn't need fatigue. It doesn't forget. And most importantly, it doesn't stay inside one domain. It learns across domains simultaneously. And that creates a shift that is not obvious at first, because AI doesn't replace the obvious tasks of experts. It replaces the hidden ones: the judgment calls, the diagnostic intuition, the "I've seen this before" moment. And that's where expertise actually lives. The first signs appeared in medicine. Radiology was expected to be one of the safest expert fields. Reading scans requires training, experience, and deep visual pattern recognition. Doctors spend years learning how to detect subtle anomalies in imaging data. But AI systems trained on millions of scans began detecting patterns humans consistently missed. Not obvious tumors, not clear abnormalities, but early-stage signals so subtle they were often invisible to the human eye. At first, doctors treated AI as an assistant, a second opinion, a support tool. But something interesting happened. In controlled studies, AI systems sometimes identified conditions earlier than experienced specialists, and not just by a little margin, by measurable gaps that changed treatment outcomes. That forced a difficult question. If the AI is more accurate in some cases, who is the expert? The human who understands context, or the system that sees patterns across millions of cases? A similar shift is happening in law. Legal experts rely on precedent, years of case analysis, interpretation of complex language, and ambiguous rules. But AI systems trained on legal databases can now scan thousands of documents in seconds. They identify contradictions across rulings. They predict case outcomes based on historical patterns. They highlight weak arguments before a human lawyer even finishes reading a file. Junior lawyers are not the first to feel this impact. Senior legal researchers are, because AI is not replacing basic document drafting. It is replacing high-level legal reasoning support. In finance, the pattern is even more aggressive. Portfolio managers once relied on intuition built from market cycles. They studied decades of crashes, booms, and anomalies. They developed market sense. But AI systems don't rely on intuition. They analyze millions of signals simultaneously: news sentiment, trading volume anomalies, global macro indicators, microsecond-level market shifts. They detect correlations no human could track in real time. And increasingly, human experts are not making final decisions. They're supervising machine-generated strategies. Even in software engineering, the shift is visible. AI tools no longer just write simple code snippets. They now debug complex systems, refactor large code bases, identify performance bottlenecks, suggest architectural improvements, not replacing beginners who write simple functions, but challenging senior engineers who design systems. Because system-level thinking is exactly what AI is getting better at. In science, the disruption is even more subtle. Researchers traditionally build expertise through deep specialization. A physicist focuses on physics, a biologist focuses on biology, a chemist focuses on chemistry, entry. But AI systems trained on cross-disciplinary data can identify connections between fields that specialists often miss, patterns that exist across physics and biology, mathematical structures that repeat in economics and ecology, behavioral similarities between unrelated systems. This is where expertise begins to lose its exclusivity, because human experts are trained to go deeper into one field. AI goes across all fields at once, and sometimes the most important discoveries are not deep, but cross-connected, the shift that nobody expected. The assumption was simple: AI would automate repetitive work first. Data entry, customer support, basic content writing, simple analysis. But those tasks are actually easy for humans to evaluate and correct. What is harder to evaluate is expert reasoning, because expertise often operates in ambiguity. And ambiguity is where AI is becoming surprisingly strong. AI systems don't need certainty. They operate in probabilities. They compare thousands of possible outcomes simultaneously. Where a human expert says, "I think this is the best option based on experience," AI says, "Based on 12 million similar cases, this option has a 78.4% success probability under current constraints." That changes the power dynamic, because expertise has always been tied to confidence. But AI replaces confidence with statistical superiority. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough to matter. And here's the uncomfortable truth: experts are easier to replace first because their work is more measurable. Their decisions can be benchmarked, their outcomes can be compared, their performance can be evaluated against data. Beginners, on the other hand, often work in messy, unstructured environments where AI struggles to define clear success metrics. But expert domains already have structured data, historical records, and evaluation frameworks, which makes them perfect targets for AI systems. Why this is happening quietly? This transition doesn't look like replacement, it looks like augmentation. Doctors use AI tools, lawyers use AI search systems, engineers use AI co-pilots, analysts use AI forecasting tools. But over time, something subtle happens. The AI becomes the first reader, the first reviewer, the first decision maker. The human becomes the validator. And eventually, the human becomes the backup. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because systems that are faster, more consistent, and more scalable naturally take the lead position. This is not a sudden disruption. It is a gradual inversion of authority, and most professionals don't notice it happening in real time. The narrative that AI would replace beginners first is comforting. It suggests a predictable future, a slow, manageable transition. But reality is more complex. AI doesn't replace difficulty and order. It replaces patterns it can model better than humans. And many of those patterns exist inside expert thinking. The people who spent decades learning how to see what others cannot see are now competing with systems that can see across millions of cases at once. This doesn't mean experts become useless, but it does mean expertise is changing shape, from memory-based knowledge to system-based collaboration, from individual intuition to machine-augmented reasoning, from "I know better" to "I can interpret what the system sees." And the real shift is not just technological, it is psychological. Because for the first time in history, expertise is no longer the highest form of authority in decision-making. Prediction is. And as AI becomes more capable, the quiet replacement of experts may not feel like replacement at all. It may feel like improvement, until one day we realize the experts were not removed. They were absorbed into systems that can think at a scale no human mind can match. And at that point, the question is no longer who the expert is. It becomes who is interpreting the expertise.